a lot of people have the concept of a radio station being this huge rooms full of equipment and everything, but really it's not that way. I mean, it's this is a unit that's just been finished. It's a more higher end unit, but I mean relatively it's still a pretty small box. It's a complete transmitter, and beyond the transmitter, all you need is the power supply, which takes your wall voltage, 120 volts AC, converts it to a DC voltage at a sufficient current rating. You need a filter between the transmitter and the antenna, which gets rid of all your harmonics, or at least minimizes the point they're not a problem. You need cabling between the filter and the antenna. You need an antenna itself, which you can make fairly simply, or else we have different kits and even one manufactured antenna available as well. And that's really, as far as the transmitter hardware goes, that's basically what you need. So I mean, really, a lot of stuff people already have sitting around their homes. They have CD players, tape players, some people have mixers already, microphones. So the basic technical package will cost $300 to $500. Beyond that, whatever audio equipment you might want to add to it. So it's a really inexpensive proposition for people to do. Well, my feeling is that stations should be kept at as low power level as possible to serve their community. In other words, the more for different communities of people, the more communities can be served by less power. Well, the FCC says, well, you can put one, that somehow in a community area, a 5,000 watt station covering this huge area will somehow best serve that whole community, as they don't really see community the way we see community. We see it in a whole different light. We say, well, sure, you can put one station on at 5,000 watts in this area, but in that whole broad umbrella, you could have probably a dozen stations on in different areas within that umbrella, sharing just a couple of frequencies, because if they're low enough power, they can coexist with each other and not sit on each other. So to us, it's a much more efficient use of the spectrum to have dozens of small stations rather than several big stations dominating the area, particularly in urban areas where there's, like Oakland, you've got, like right south of downtown, you've got a community there that's Laotian, Vietnamese, Filipino, Mexicano. I mean, it's just a real mixture, and they could use at least one or two stations right there. Just covering that little 1 mile area would cover lots of people who would never ever have a voice. And the same is true in a certain respect of there are lots of small towns across this country where the local radio station or stations have been bought up by some national conglomerate and have become satellite feeders with no local origination of programming whatsoever. And who's the FCC to say? And then you go in the middle of Nebraska or Iowa somewhere where there's not all that much radio to begin with. I mean, who the hell is the FCC to say that this community can have its own voice at 10 or 15 or 20 watts? I mean, it's totally insane.
All less than 200.
Ford's gonna. Tasty beverages like Coke to part.
ABC News.
9-year-olds and 10-year-old boys who said the county sheriff department held guns to their heads while they asked them questions about Bear Lincoln. Where's Bear Lincoln?
See, I'm a member of Food Not Bombs, and I just got very tired of seeing my friends beaten and arrested day after day for serving food to the homeless, just for having compassion that they wanted to give food to hungry people. And these arrests and beatings and everything were going on with very little commentary or condemnation from the media here in San Francisco of what passes for the media here in San Francisco. And while the mayor and the police department were able to utilize that media to get their side of the story told about why they were arresting us and so forth, we were reduced to just standing on street corners handing out flyers to get our message out, which was not a very level playing field at all. So we started doing San Francisco Liberation Radio.
Our number here is 750-1714. That's 750-1714. So please pick up your phone and give us a call if you're interested in posing a question to Dennis Jennings. And I'm Kilu Nyasha, and you're tuned to Freedom is a Constant Struggle. I began working with Philip Muldery at KPFA, Pacifica Public Radio, or listener-sponsored radio at KPFA in Berkeley. I was with them beginning in 1983, before they opened their new building, and I used to tape commentaries for Traffic Jam, which was an afternoon drive time program on KPFA, an hour-and-a-half magazine-style program. Then very recently, as many people already know, Pacifica Radio went through a lot of major changes. All monthly programs were dropped, and Freedom is a Constant Struggle was also canceled, along with numerous other programs. And so I was without a program, although I was invited to make proposals. But I'm not pleased at all with the way colleagues and myself were treated. And I was at a rally one evening speaking out in behalf of Mumia Abu-Jamal, who was at that time facing imminent execution in August. And after I spoke and out about the fact that Freedom had been canceled, Richard Edmondson came over to me and said, well, you can join San Francisco Liberation Radio. We'd love to have you. And so I began doing an hour a week on San Francisco Liberation Radio, and here I am. My own MO, I have to say, is trying to keep my finger on the pulse and trying to stay abreast of what's going on, but also trying to counter what's being put out there by the mass media whenever they're, really propagating their own viewpoint. I try to counter it with an alternative or a revolutionary viewpoint. And Wednesday he come up and we asked him, where you been? Our uncle said, where you been, Mike? Michael said, I've been in jail. You know, Uncle Ed, they wouldn't let me make a telephone call. They wouldn't read me my rights. They didn't tell me what I was charged with. I never went to court. Finally, they said they lost my paperwork, and after 3 days, they let me go. They didn't even read me my rights. Well, nephew, my Uncle Ed told him, there's a simple reason for that. Indians ain't got no damn rights here or anywhere else in this country. And that's the truth. And now the police must have some version of or some explanation as to why they went in shooting. What is their version of this incident? You can read that on America's. You can see that on America's Most Wanted. I mean, the police version, basically, the police version has been discounted already, because the police stated to America's Most Wanted that the Indians fired first. In fact, they've changed their story at least 3 or 4 times. Mm-hmm. The first version was that Leonard Acorn Peters fired first. And we know now that his weapon was never fired, that the weapon found with his body was not fired. We will be right back on San Francisco Liberation Radio 93.7 after we listen to a 3 or 4 minute commentary by Mumia Abu-Jamal that was taped in 1992 when he was at Huntington Prison on death row. We